for those of you that were just with me in the other room, since you have me here again, if you would like to leave, feel free to do so right now. Go see somebody else. You don't have to put up with me twice in a row here. But for heroes, welcome again to the State of Cryptocurrency Regulation. So for a little background on me, I've been a training specialist at Chainalysis for about a year. I tend to focus on the compliance side of things, KYT in particular, our transaction monitoring product. Prior to that, I was an investigator for 3 years at Gemini in their compliance department, and before that was just a poor law student. But I really got my start in cryptocurrency at the Securities Exchange Commission in the United States, and I was in the Division of Corporation Finance, just going through kind of looking for interesting things to do, where I stumbled across a bunch of different cryptocurrency exchange-traded fund proposals that definitely never got approved. So pretty nice background, just as far as like cryptocurrency in general. Cryptocurrency for lawyers is basically what a prospectus is. So that's really where I got my start. So agenda here is just to take a look at how far we've come, especially since that moment in 2016 when I was just in an ugly cubicle with no windows at the SEC, right? Reading these things. Very much different environment, always changing very quickly. We'll talk a little bit about some of the things that the Financial Action Task Force really identified in particular relative to the other recommendations, the other guidance that they've issued in this 2021 publication in October. And then just really dive into some of the technical aspects of the software itself that is a little problematizing on the regulatory front. So talk about the tech, and then we'll conclude. So first, global regulatory outlook. Cryptocurrency adoption base than ever before. So all of these countries have some kind of regulation in place, some kind of cryptocurrency infrastructure where it can be acquired, sold, sent, etc. Now, of course, it can be sent anywhere in the world, and it's just whether or not there is some sort of law that will determine what needs to be monitored, what needs to be reported, etc. So lots more places. And then here we have the general structure, right? So we've got advisory bodies. FATF isn't the only one, but this is the one we're talking about here, so it makes the slide. Sorry, Egmont Group. But we've got advisory body at the top, and then we've got countries that choose and interpret this advice and then turn it into legislation. So we have specific laws and regulations. They look very similar to each other that, different VASPs, different businesses in these jurisdictions must comply with. And then finally, there's that level of regulation, which is not the law at all. It is just really advice, but coming from a person that can, punish you legally. So it's very advisable to take that advice, right? So interpretive guidance, what have you. And then finally, these little slices of the bureaucracy that are responsible for all of these things. So FATF recommendations at country level. You need to have a framework. You need to identify, assess, and understand the money laundering and terrorist financing risks that you are exposing yourself to. Terrorist financing gets added in roughly 2002 after September 11th, as far as all of the money laundering and typologies to look for. You must have some sort of registration and licensing regime, because that's when you really get to look at a business sort of de novo before it begins to operate, right? There we're looking at control persons, jurisdictions where they are operative, and it is also the mechanism that subjects them to supervision after that. And then finally, you need a financial intelligence unit. You need some sort of central body that is going to gather all of the information that all of the VASPs are going to report into. And those are the things that FATF requires of whole countries, right? And if you don't comply with those, you end up on their gray list and then sort of passively to quite actively excluded from the global financial system. So country level measures and then VASP level measures. We need to know who our customers are and have some mechanisms for figuring that out, right? Like get an ID recognition software so that you don't end up opening an account for Pikachu, right? Maintain records and transaction and KYC data. We need to keep that in the United States. I think it's somewhere between 5 and 7 years, depending on what state you're in. You also must have a risk-based approach. That's up to you to figure out what that means, but you should figure it out, and then supply evidence of your risk-based approach to your supervisor. And then finally, that FIU exists for a reason. We need to be filing reports. So things that FATF has imposed in general, that's our baseline, but things that they identify in this guidance in particular are peer-to-peer transactions. And this one was kind of the funniest for me. When I used to see those letters P2P, I'm thinking of a centralized business that facilitates a transaction between two individuals, allowing those individuals to set the terms of their transaction and what is being traded, right? So that was P2P to me. FATF is talking about peer-to-peer transactions between two individuals and their private wallet software. They identify this type of transaction, which we'll get to in a second more detail, but which has always been the goal of cryptocurrency in the first place, as a risk, right? They're saying that, you know, we're reaching a moment where we have developed enough mechanisms to interact with the network and to make it easy that transactions between two individuals, which is the network that Satoshi Nakamoto envisioned in the first place, are a risk now. Because as it turns out, all regulation in cryptocurrency is fundamentally reliant on knowing who people are, knowing where they are, and knowing where their customers are. That is how you subject centralized agencies to regulation. That is how you examine them. That is how you hold people responsible, and that is how you prosecute violators. So we have peer-to-peer transactions. We have stablecoins, another funny one with a lot of nuance. And then finally, we have decentralized finance. All of these three things are technological developments that they have called out specifically since the last time FATF spoke to you in 2019 or 2015 or whatever publication you sort of want to fix on. But these are three trends that are pushing us more towards a truly decentralized cryptocurrency ecosystem as opposed to one that relies pretty fundamentally on funds moving through third-party intermediaries. So question for the group, how many of you own cryptocurrency? Yeah, good numbers here. How many of you bought it from a miner on the street? No? No takers? I had one time where I found that. Someone sent me a source of wealth with a scan of a check and then a very early wallet. But one time in 3 years, analyzing source of funds, not too great. So in terms of how we acquire cryptocurrency, it's not directly from miners or mining conglomerates or from mining pools, it is from exchanges. That is where we deposit fiat currency, convert it to cryptocurrency, and perhaps withdraw to a personal wallet software we control. So that is the paradigm that we're working from, and these things are messing with it. They are messing it up in different ways. So first, peer-to-peer transaction. So stablecoins, they are combining properties of cryptocurrency with the stability or lack of volatility might be the more accurate way to say that, of fiat currency, right? The idea is that we marry the global transmissibility of cryptocurrency with the thing that we are always calculating the value of in our heads. So we say, what's the price of Bitcoin today? Anybody know? Numbers? $29,000. Now, he didn't say the price of the Bitcoin is 1 Bitcoin. He said it's $29,000, right? So stablecoins are then marrying the transmissibility properties and the individual control properties of cryptocurrency and combining it, demarcating the value in dollars or whatever fiat currency of your choice. So FATF identifies this as the high potential for mass adoption because it can logically be used in retail payment. If anyone just kind of wants to feel like a little green in the gills, look up the Bitcoin miner, early Bitcoin miner, who paid for 2 Papa John's pizzas, not even good New York pizza, but suburban chain pizza with 20,000 Bitcoin, right? you know, you might be an early adopter, you might be an enthusiast, but it's just kind of a chilling transaction to think about now. Stablecoins obviate this problem. We're not going to regret our pizza either, you know, digestively or from a price point perspective, because they are allowing us to really pay for things with cryptocurrency, right? So there's all this potential for direct retail payment as opposed to even needing to go through a merchant service, which is going to process the cryptocurrency side of the transaction and let retail businesses like Macy's or Best Buy accept your crypto. Instead, you can pay for things in a stablecoin. So that is making it more of a reality in terms of a medium of exchange. You've probably seen these terms like, you know, I'm a hodler, or I think of cryptocurrency more as a commodity or a store of value, even though the word currency is baked into cryptocurrency. So this is bringing some truth to the currency part of the cryptocurrency equation. And the problems with stablecoins over here, and it looks like my slides got a little put out of order, but what we'll say with stablecoins is that the question surrounding them is, how are your reserves backed up, right? So we have a lot of different kinds of stablecoins, and I will just go ahead and find some of those in a second here. But nope. Since we're already talking about them, we'll just have to come back. What are the problems solved for? We are avoiding price volatility, using it as payment, and then the cross-border thing is also pretty wild, right? That is what is really enabled on the transmission of value. But the rise in the market cap of stablecoins, it's fundamentally linked to the rise of the decentralized finance industry. So we have two types. One kind, you know, you and I are probably using, if we are using stablecoins. Another kind is very popular in the like core original community. You can guess which one they prefer, right? Fiat-backed stablecoins, not loved by sort of like hardcore early Bitcoin entrants, simply because it is linking it to a government-issued national fiat currency, which is sort of not the point of cryptocurrency to a wide audience. We then have cryptocurrency-backed stablecoins, and these are sort of more favorable. So differences here, we are collateralizing the reserve of the fiat currency that you can redeem a stablecoin for in fiat dollars. So that'll be banknotes, cash equivalents, and really the diligent issuers of stablecoins will have their reserves audited by some sort of respected third party. But it really is, at its core, localizing the trust element of something that is supposed to be trustless and decentralized in specific established financial institutions, both the issuer of the stablecoin and the auditor of the stablecoin reserves. So the questions that we have surrounding the fiat-backed ones are really fundamentally, can you back it up? Like, do you actually have this value? Is it stored somewhere? Or is it really, have you overissued your stablecoin instead of making sure that you have reserves on a daily or a monthly basis that are equivalent to the outstanding market capitalization of that stablecoin? On the other side of things, we have cryptocurrency-backed stablecoins. These are really not issued by any one company or any one group of individuals that controls a company. Instead, these are issued by a smart contract. So we are setting up a smart contract, say I deposit 1,000 Ether, I take out 600 DAI. So the way that you create a cryptocurrency-backed stablecoin, which is technically going to vary in price and be volatile, is you over-collateralize the cryptocurrency. So I'm depositing 1,000 Ether, I'm getting back, not 600 DAI, Ether is worth more than that, but just for the ease of my presentation numbers, we'll say 600 DAI. Should the value of my Ether that I have used to withdraw the DAI sink too far below the value of the stablecoin that I have created with this smart contract, once the value sinks too low, my original collateral will be partially liquidated automatically in order to make sure that the value of the stablecoin remains constant. And then I can always, of course, send the stablecoin back, get my original asset back. And in this way, we are solving the volatility problem differently, which is just over-collateralization. So some different risks on the cryptocurrency-backed stablecoin, but also some different benefits, right? We're not relying on a single company or a single auditor to make sure that we have the reserves. Instead, it is an open smart contract that anyone can read and audit and then understand how it works, or pay someone to understand how it works. And then the other thing is that it's not reliant on any one cryptocurrency asset. So we can combine a whole bunch of different cryptocurrencies, use them to prop up the value of the stablecoin, and in that way kind of achieve diversification in a way that does not exist even with the fiat-backed stablecoins. But either way, we're solving this volatility issue and creating stablecoins. So specifically with the cryptocurrency-backed stablecoins, that is all kind of happening in a meta decentralized economy. And then we have this idea of central bank digital currencies. So governments around the world are kind of figuring out that distributed ledger systems that are immutable are a really good way of keeping track of assets, right? So it does simplify the job of managing how much currency is in circulation, understanding who has what currency. There are a lot of unexplored sort of technical surveillance capabilities baked into this idea of what is essentially a stablecoin issued by a national government. Again, not the hardcore crypto people coming from that early adopter libertarian mindset. Absolutely not a fan of this idea, right? That's not what cryptocurrency is about philosophically. So that is the stablecoin section. And then we have DeFi, right? So what am I going to do with my stablecoin? I don't know if I necessarily want to fling CUSD or Gemini dollar around the way that I manage my Venmo account. Not everyone has the wallet to receive that if I need to split a dinner check with someone. But I might use the stablecoin in decentralized finance. Why do they have such an outsized role in this ecosystem? Well, DeFi is all about replicating extant financial instruments that exist in the fiat world and bringing those to cryptocurrency. So imagine a mutual fund or a lending product. DeFi can do a lot of these things, but the difference is it is non-custodial. You're still not really trusting anybody when you are investing in a DeFi protocol. Instead, you are participating in the protocol and you can change the status of your commitment at any particular time, right? So it's transparent, but nobody is in possession of your money the way that somebody would be if you bought 50 shares of a mutual fund. That takes a little bit more to extract. So bringing the complexity of our financial system, but bringing it to the individual, and then it was mentioned earlier, Michael mentioned it earlier, I think, but we have this gatekeeping concept of the accredited investor, right? So you must prove that you make a certain amount or that you have a certain net worth in order to participate in certain financial transactions. DeFi does away with this concept. It doesn't say you are not rich enough to invest in something this risky. Instead, it removes all of those sort of philosophical gatekeeping mechanisms and then allows anyone to read the code, understand the protocol, participate, or just speculate wildly because you think some new token is the hot thing and it's going to go up in value in the next week. Then you sell, right? So all of those possibilities. As far as the transaction monitoring aspect of decentralized finance, it's funny because the funds are decentralized. The creators of these protocols are maybe known in the community, but maybe not. So as far as an ascertainable institution or control person or creator, they could be anywhere, they could be nowhere. But the transaction monitoring of decentralized finance is actually quite a bit easier than people think it is. So from a, who do I hold responsible for creating this shitcoin? Well, that's a tougher question. But Can we make sure that funds are not flowing from a terrorist financing cluster into an exchange being converted into fiat and introduced into the illicit financial system? Well, yes, we can. Decentralized finance, because it is open, transparent, it is also monitorable. And that is something that I guess I would tell the regulator, is that you can monitor the flow of funds through a smart contract. It's easier than monitoring them through Kraken or Coinbase, because there is no disjunctive relationship when funds hit a service, what the service does with those funds, and then when someone requests a withdrawal from an account that is not controlled by them, it's controlled by a service. So we can trace things right through DeFi protocols, and that makes the monitoring a lot simpler. So here we see a sanctioned entity, a decentralized exchange, and we can get all kinds of information about the address that the funds came from and then the address that they went back to in this transaction. So if sanctioned entity is trying to turn, we'll say like DAI into wrapped ether, and I'm just gonna come give this side of the room some love since you're in the darkness now. If they are making, converting from one token into another, that is something that is easily traced through and visualized in the product. So what is the difference between a DeFi token and a DeFi protocol? They have some pretty different concerns. You can kind of break this down this way. The DeFi protocol is what you are participating in if you are, maybe doing one of those like complex financial transactions, investing in the crypto mutual fund, et cetera, then you're directly in the protocol and it's allowing you to do something specific. The DeFi token is the thing that usually sits ancillary to the protocol. It is the thing that fuels the protocol. So if you believe in, Uniswap as a decentralized exchange, you can buy Uni token, and that is more like, I believe in this project, and so I am injecting liquidity into it. So the DeFi protocol side, from a regulatory concern area, that is more about transaction monitoring, anti-money laundering. When you like a project and you buy a certain portion of it as a token, injecting liquidity into the project, that is more concerning from a, is this a security, is this some sort of scam ICO perspective, right? So difference between tokens and protocols, although DeFi tokens are compatible in other protocols, it gets very hairy and complex in there, right? So different animating concerns. The question in decentralized finance from a enterprise level perspective is, who developed this? Who is involved in ongoing development of this? Where are you located? Where is your customer base? Because these are the things that would allow us under various legal frameworks to assert jurisdiction, right? And hold someone responsible should things go awry. So these are some of the questions, and entity identification is at the center of regulatory concerns surrounding decentralized finance. So decentralization in this area happens by degrees. Everything must come into being at some point. Anyone know how Bitcoin came into being and we ended up with this whole ecosystem, why we're here today? Takers? I didn't know the answer to this after working in it for 3.5 years. What's that? I was saying it was the CIA. Not the CIA. Always a good bet, though. You never know. So Satoshi Nakamoto just releases the protocol and releases the code, and people build cryptocurrency. They build Bitcoin wallets, and then people just start mining it. It just comes into being out of nowhere because of the sheer faith in this idea and its radical nature, right? But not all coins just simply come into being because miners are competing with each other to create it. Instead, we also have this ICO, all the rage in late 2017, early 2018, lots of it scammy, but then not all ICOs either, right? Ether conducted an ICO. I used to have that very depressing moment of asking for source of funds verifications for new millionaires, and they're like, well, I sent the Ether ICO 1 Bitcoin, I got back 1,000 Ether, and here we are, I'm buying a yacht. So, plenty of ICOs, this is how some coins come into being, end up being a very good investment because it turns out they're a very good idea. And then finally, we have this idea of the airdrop. And this is now how many new developers of new coins are coming into being. They're saying, well, I definitely don't want to look like an ICO of any kind, and so instead, I'm going to distribute this new token to those that are interested by simply distributing it and creating a market and creating liquidity users that way. But the point is that someone must create something for it to come into being. So there's always an element of centralization at the beginning. Then if people like the idea, if they're buying this token, maybe you are creating a new market, and the idea is that someday down the line, you will have decentralized governance. So instead of just the creators of a project having complete control over the development of that project going forward, you create a decentralized system of governance whereby participants and owners of this token can vote on change proposals over time in this decentralized way. But nothing begins that way, but many decentralized finance projects aim to end that way. So I will release the reins, and some of them, right from their inception, have no ongoing involvement in the management, no C-suite to hold responsible for any kind of malfeasance, right? So aim to be decentralized eventually. This brings us to this framework that has probably been in the back of your mind this whole time, right? Which is the Howey test, an investment of money in a common enterprise with the expectation of profit based on the efforts of others. And what we're kind of thinking about in cryptocurrency then, as to whether or not something falls into this, is how is it distributed? Was it an ICO? Then you're probably in hotter water. Whereas if it was one of these airdrop things, then maybe you're okay. We have level of decentralization and maturity, right? If you have a mature ecosystem surrounding your new cryptocurrency, then that is a good thing on the general scale. The right to distributions and profitability guarantees. I don't know why anybody guarantees profit these days, but it doesn't seem like a good idea. To me, based on my experience, if someone is guaranteeing you profit, please let Chainalysis know. And then finally, third-party reliance, right? So I developed this project. Am I involved in the ongoing development of this project? Because what this creates is information asymmetries. If the control persons or if the founders of a project are always going to be involved, they're always going to know more than the market of participants, the ones that are purchasing a new token. So that's what we want to avoid, is just the reliance on the efforts of others who have better info than you. So this brings us to this token safe harbor proposal idea, which is basically, at the heart of it, let's give things time to develop. And in the meantime, while we are creating a new market, a new user base for a new token, let's make sure we know exactly who is creating what, and make them subject to some minimal disclosures. We also want to understand the involvement of the people that created something, and then ultimately, after, I believe it's a 2-year period of this temporary status, while we have a good idea that we want to execute legally, and so we'll be exempt from some of this law for a while, at the end you have this outside legal opinion where it is deciding, are you, in fact, a security? Did you fail to achieve decentralization in beginning your project? Or do you qualify? Is the market specifically mature? Do you not have control anymore? You don't have involvement. Instead, you have executed on what you intended, and therefore, there is no need to register as a security. But in the meantime, you had time to develop your idea and develop a market for your idea. Again, Bitcoin, not always worth $29,000. That took a little while. So some themes to draw from a few of these different things. We have global cryptocurrency and adoption have increased dramatically. Just so many countries have some sort of regulatory framework these days. And kind of also based on what Michael said, we've just gone through a period of real development, right? We have these non-custodial wallet softwares that are incredibly convenient and easy to use, where no longer are you needing to build your own cryptocurrency wallet. That's how there's so much quote unquote lost Bitcoin out there, is because it was just someone built a wallet and then it's kept on a specific device, and there are plenty of people diving through dumpsters trying to recover old private keys because there's really old Bitcoin on there, right? Not unsophisticated like that. Instead, we have incredible softwares for interacting with the market. We also have this element of the stablecoin that is getting rid of some of the volatility that makes Bitcoin completely non-feasible as a currency for retail purchases, unless you're just feeling bold. You always can, right? But again, not wanting to pay for pizza with 20,000 Bitcoin. So that's another aspect that makes the general ecosystem, after, again, this period of development, a lot more feasible for me to send a payment to you without going through those centralized third-party intermediaries. And then finally, we have the development of the DeFi ecosystem. So when someone develops something new and they're everywhere and nowhere, who do we hold responsible when that new thing is just entirely a scam, versus who do we enable, as we have seen a ton of interest and a ton of money go into this new kind of cryptocurrency transaction? Like, who enables the people to do it legally, and who punishes malicious actors for just conducting a scam? So 3 big factors FATF calls out that have pushed us towards a greater decentralization, and then anticipating these things, basically continuing on all fronts. It's always going to be easier to transact on your own behalf, conduct peer-to-peer transactions, and then we see this DeFi and we see this stablecoin development. So looking forward into the future, how do we make sure that we can continue to regulate this industry as the technology evolves so much? And then we need to create thoughtful legal and regulatory strategy around these developments in the tech. And with that, that is the state of cryptocurrency regulation. So, any questions? Oh, no, it's you. Sorry.
So, you mentioned there's a cryptocurrency-backed stablecoin, right? And that is basically you're mitigating the risk in fluctuation of cryptocurrency by having other cryptocurrency, which is more in volume. But sometimes you observe that there is drastic variation in the prices of cryptocurrency. How do you plan for that? How do you mitigate that risk?
Yeah, so the cryptocurrencies that you're allowed to stake when you draw out a stablecoin, they have different ratios that you can borrow against. So for instance, I mentioned Ethereum when minting, a specific type of stablecoin that's cryptocurrency backed. You don't need to deposit as much Ethereum to get the same value as you would with a cryptocurrency that has a less established user base or market. So they rate the different cryptocurrencies and then determine how much you can borrow against what you deposit.
Sorry.
Oh, yeah.
It's probably easier.
Sorry, big room, and they're in the dark, so they might as well be able to hear you.
So Joe, I was wondering what your thoughts are, especially being at Chainalysis, in terms of some of this new notices of proposed rulemaking and things like that that FATF is coming out with respect to unhosted wallets, and how Chainalysis can help.
Yeah, I mean, those were some of the slides that disappeared on me, so I'm wondering if I'm being censored, but I'm glad you asked the question anyways. Yeah, so, it's a weird issue because, again, that's always been the goal, and it's only now that we're getting to a place that it's quite achievable, right? But as far as what I know, I think it is on the deposit side, right? So things are coming into a regulated institution from an unhosted or private wallet. Anywhere from, I've seen $250 be proposed, like $250, which is low, and then $1,000 is the FATF recommendation. $3,000 in the United States for wire transfers are the benchmarks that we're measuring travel rule compliance with. And I just think what we've seen on the VASP to VASP front, which is the framework that it was built for, right? So transmissions of value between two regulated financial institutions, that framework looks good so far, right? We have encrypted transmission of information between a Kraken and a Coinbase. And that's really important in a system where you can transmit cryptocurrency from one jurisdiction to another very, very easily. So I think that makes a lot of sense. I think it also makes sense to hold everyone to the same regulatory framework. So we have a bunch of American companies now that have opted into this travel rule information sharing program, and that makes it workable. And that's also expanded well beyond the borders of the United States, right? So they operate in all kinds of places all over the world on that map. And so you can comply with the travel rule in that context too, between two businesses that are incorporated in the same jurisdiction. And then as far as the unhosted wallet to cryptocurrency business goes, I think that's one area where the technology and the regulation and the animating forces behind the regulation don't make so much sense. So we'll see what ends up being required, but for instance, it just needs to be done quite delicately, and you can imagine me from my Kraken account sending you $1,000 worth of cryptocurrency to your unhosted wallet. Well, like, Kraken doesn't know who you are. I don't really want them transmitting my KYC to some random unhosted wallet, and therefore, you know, we'll see how that develops, but it should be handled recognizing that the whole point and goal of cryptocurrency, and what's now a very easy possibility, was to put financial control in the hands of the individual.
I just am curious in terms of your views. You know, there's obviously the FATF travel rule issues and the U.S. Interface, but I think people lose sight of the fact that at the end of the day, collection of information is pretty important if you want to do sanctions compliance. You know, if you want to be mitigating your risk of sanctions violations, shall we say. So how does that sort of fit into, you know, the conversations that you're having with people that, okay, yeah, it's 250 or it's 1,000, depending on whether it's U.S. or, well, U.S. isn't 250 yet, it's 3,000. But you know, can you afford not to know where you're sending, even if it's a self-hosted wallet, to who you're sending?
Yeah, so I mean, I think probably helpful clarification is that I'm always really thinking in reactor terms. And from like thinking about the unhosted wallet, you know, I'm really looking to, like, OFAC is sanctioning entities, and then the cryptocurrency that flows to and from those entities, we're tracing through unhosted wallets and then looking at where that originates, rather than thinking of the unhosted wallet as the direct counterparty. So like the ability to perceive indirect exposure, I think, is a good mitigating factor on the whole dynamic of unhosted wallets, because that's not something that we're really paying attention to in the product. Instead, we're looking at the ultimate origin or ultimate destination of that cryptocurrency, and then, you know, certainly paying attention to if it's originating from a sanctioned entity after that, the moment of that sanctions event, right? So that is one mitigant.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, we got one mic for you.
Thank you again. So my question is, going back to stablecoins, right? Just your thoughts on what's going to happen, right? Obviously, last week is going to kind of bring this to the forefront of priorities, and maybe, you know, it's your thoughts. Obviously, you don't have a crystal ball, but there's probably chatter, there's probably stuff that's out there that I'm just not aware of, right? So, like, what do you think is going to transpire? What are maybe the thoughts coming from Janet Yellen and the Hester Pierces about, okay, well, are we going to say, you know, no more algorithmic stablecoins? Are we going to have like a sort of minimum level of collateralization? Are we going to say stablecoins have to like have, you know, a certain amount of US dollar, you know, treasuries or whatever, right? Money, you know, money market securities, right? So just curious about your thoughts. What do you think is going to shake out?
Shape of those going forward. So, I mean, kind of starting with the fiat-backed stablecoins, like it would be, I won't say easy because it would involve drafting some sort of regulation or legislation, but it would kind of make sense to hold issuers of stablecoins that are fiat-backed to the requirements that a bank is held to. Conceptually, you are just taking some portion of money that is in circulation out of circulation and then kind of changing its technical nature, but it's sort of equivalent to opening a regional bank. So I feel like that kind of stablecoin would fit very easily into that kind of framework, legally speaking. As far as the, like DAI, which is it is a cryptocurrency-backed stablecoin, it's shown incredible resilience through big fluctuations in the market, right? Like big downturns in the market. So I don't know that that is in too much trouble. And then as far as the algorithmic stablecoins go, I don't think this is the last one for certain. I just think that a better one will probably come into being. And my question, I guess, sort of to you is, how do you stop another algorithmic stablecoin from being created if it is just a piece of code released into the internet writ large, right?
Can you talk about 121?
I'm sorry?
Can you talk about 121, SAB 121?
No, I can't. Yeah, sorry, I'm not familiar.
Okay.
Thank you. I just want to follow up on the previous question. Probably the SEC investigations and the testing of the stablecoin that could probably lead to the conclusion by the SEC that would it be considered as a security? Would it help to somehow to provide with a regulatory framework in order to provide more transparency regarding the way that the stablecoin was
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about like characterizing it as a security or what it would be considered. Just in my review of them, I feel like the banking framework makes sort of the most sense surrounding the stablecoins. And obviously the transparency is one of the major issues that people have with stablecoins on both sides, right? Like, again, you are outsourcing the reserves to a third-party auditor, and maybe it's a once-a-month statement. Some stablecoins will update the composition of their reserves on a daily basis and, again, publish it to everyone. But I would imagine that if some version of CBDCs becomes normal, or even if stablecoin issuers are just regulated differently, that there would be some consistency in how they say, I have the assets to back up this digital currency. And that would be generally a good thing, parity there. We've got 2 minutes and 20 seconds left, so any final questions?
I thought that was an interesting question. I'm not sure I heard everything about the stable coins, but I think it's important to point out that the stable coins, you have to look very carefully at how they're actually, are they backed, are they reserved, are they collateralized, and that can make a difference as to whether it's a security or it's not a security. So I think the banks that are experimenting with stable coins are trying to craft it in a way that it won't be a security, where some of the early cases that are out there now, some of them have stumbled a little bit and have cleaned that issue up, but I think it's an important clarification.
Yeah, if you take anything away, theme of this presentation, avoid being classified as a security, if possible. A lot of obligations there. Okay, well, if there are no further questions, thank you very much, everyone.